The dust-stained window pane of the Silver Creek saloon rattled as Eliza Dawson pressed her trembling hand against it, watching the commotion outside with a mixture of fear and resignation. It was 1876, and life in the frontier town of Redemption, Wyoming Territory, had taught her one certainty: men brought nothing but pain and betrayal. The memory of her father's abandonment, her brother's death at the hands of drunken miners, and her former employer's wandering hands had crystallized into a single, unshakable belief. Men were to be feared, avoided, and never, under any circumstances, trusted. "They're coming back," Eliza whispered to Mrs. Holloway, the elderly widow who had taken her in after she'd fled her last position. "The cattle drive from the Northridge Ranch must be finished." Mrs. Holloway nodded sagely, her arthritic fingers continuing to stitch the quilt spread across her lap. "Lucas Northridge runs a tight outfit. Those boys might be rowdy, but they won't cause the kind of trouble we've seen from other ranches." Eliza turned from the window, her plain brown dress swishing around her ankles. At 22, she had already experienced more hardship than many twice her age. Her chestnut hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes, once bright with hope, now carried a wariness that rarely lifted. "All men cause trouble, Mrs. Holloway. It's in their nature." The older woman sighed. "Not all men are like your father, dear. Or like those miners who killed Thomas." Eliza's jaw tightened. She'd heard this lecture before. "I should get back to the boarding house. Mrs. Peterson will need help with the evening meal." The boarding house where Eliza worked was already buzzing with activity when she arrived. Mrs. Peterson, a kind but stern woman in her 50s, was barking orders at the kitchen staff. "Eliza, thank goodness. We've got a full house tonight with the Northridge boys in town. I need you to prepare rooms 3, 4, and 5. Mrs. Peterson handed her a stack of fresh linens. "And Lucas Northridge himself will be staying in the corner suite. Make sure it's perfect." Eliza suppressed a groan. Having cowboys tramping through the boarding house meant extra work, extra noise, and extra reason to keep her door firmly locked at night. She worked efficiently, changing linens and sweeping floors, all the while keeping an ear tuned to the increasing commotion from the street. By sundown, the sound of raucous laughter and boots on wooden boardwalks filled the town. Eliza hurried to finish her chores, hoping to retreat to her small attic room before the cowboys invaded the boarding house. She was dusting the mantelpiece in the corner suite when the door swung open. Eliza jumped, nearly dropping her feather duster. A tall man filled the doorway. Dust covered his clothes, and his dark hat was pulled low over his face. But even beneath the grime of the trail, there was no mistaking the commanding presence of Lucas Northridge. "Pardon me," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man of his stature. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. "I didn't realize someone was in here." Eliza pressed herself against the wall, keeping the maximum distance between them. "I was just finishing, sir." Lucas Northridge's blue eyes studied her with a curiosity that made her uncomfortable. Not in the predatory way she was accustomed to from men, but something else she couldn't quite place. "You're new," he observed. "I don't recall seeing you during my last stay." "I've been here 6 months," she answered, edging toward the door. "Mrs. Peterson hired me after she stopped herself. This man didn't need to know her history after," he prompted. "It's not important." Eliza clutched her duster tightly. "Your room is ready, Mr. Northridge. Dinner will be served in the dining room at 7. She slipped past him, careful not to let their shoulders brush. As she hurried down the hallway, she could feel his gaze following her. In the kitchen, Mrs. Peterson was directing the cooking with the precision of a general. "Eliza, once you're done with the rooms, I need you to help serve dinner. We're short-handed with Sally visiting her sister in Cheyenne. Eliza's stomach nodded. Serve dinner. But that means, yes, you'll have to interact with the guests, Mrs. Peterson said firmly. They don't bite deer. Some do, Eliza muttered under her breath. At precisely 7 o'clock, the dining room filled with hungry cowboys. They were cleaner than Eliza expected. Most had taken advantage of the bathhouse down the street, but they were still loud, boisterous, and male. She moved around the table with her eyes downcast, filling coffee cups and placing plates without engaging in conversation. Lucas Northridge sat at the head of the table, conversing quietly with his foreman. Unlike his men, he seemed to radiate a calm authority that kept even the rowdiest cowboys in check. Twice, Eliza caught him watching her with that same curious expression. As she refilled his coffee cup, his hand moved slightly, accidentally brushing against hers. Eliza recoiled as if burned coffee sloshing over the rim. "I apologize," Lucas said, grabbing his napkin to mop up the spill. "It's fine," she said stiffly, stepping back. One of the younger cowboys laughed. "Looks like you've scared her, boss." "That's enough, Charlie," Lucas replied, his tone gentle but brooking no argument. The meal continued without further incident, but Eliza could feel herself growing more tense by the minute. When Mrs. Peterson finally dismissed her for the evening, she nearly ran up the back stairs to her attic room. She had just lit her small lamp when a knock at her door startled her. "Eliza, it's Mrs. Peterson. May I come in?" Reluctantly, Eliza opened the door. Mrs. Peterson stood there with Lucas Northridge looming behind her. Eliza instinctively moved back. "Mr. Northridge has a proposition for you," Mrs. Peterson said, her expression unreadable. "A proposition?" Eliza repeated, her voice barely audible. Lucas stepped forward, remaining in the hallway. "My housekeeper at the ranch quit unexpectedly last month. Mrs. Peterson speaks highly of your work, and I'm willing to offer you a position at Northridge Ranch. The pay would be double what you earn here, plus room and board." Eliza stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to go to your ranch?" "Alone, with a bunch of cowboys." "Not alone," he corrected. "There are other women at the ranch, my cook, Mrs. Winters, and a few wives of my married hands. The main house is separate from the bunkhouse." Mrs. Peterson touched Eliza's arm. "It's a good opportunity, dear. Better than you'll find in town." I need to think about it," Eliza stammered. Lucas nodded. "Of course. I'll be in town for 3 days. You can give Mrs. Peterson your answer." He tipped his hat slightly. "Good evening, Miss Dawson." After they left, Eliza sank onto her bed, thoughts racing. Double the pay would mean reaching her savings goal much faster. But living at a remote ranch, surrounded by men. The very idea made her heart race with anxiety. Sleep eluded her that night. By morning, she was no closer to a decision. The next day passed in a blur of chores. Eliza did her best to avoid Lucas Northridge, but in a building the size of the boarding house, complete avoidance was impossible. She encountered him in the parlor that afternoon, reading a newspaper while smoking a pipe. He stood when she entered. "Miss Dawson." Eliza froze, dustpan in hand. "Mr. Northridge, I apologize for disturbing you." "You're not disturbing me." He folded the newspaper. "Have you considered my offer?" She clutched the dustpan tighter. "I have, but I don't think it would be suitable." Lucas studied her for a moment. "May I ask why?" Eliza bit her lip. "I prefer town life." "I see." His expression suggested he didn't believe her. "Well, the offer remains open should you change your mind." That evening, as Eliza was returning from an errand, she took a shortcut through the alley behind the saloon. It was a decision she immediately regretted when 3 men stumbled out the back door, clearly intoxicated. "Well, look what we have here," one slurred, blocking her path. "It's the pretty little mouse from the boarding house." Eliza recognized him as one of the miners who frequented the saloon. "Excuse me," she said firmly, trying to step around him. Another man grabbed her arm. "What's your hurry, darling? Stay and talk with us a while." "Let go of me," Eliza demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. The third man laughed. "She's a feisty one." Panic rose in Eliza's throat as they surrounded her. This was exactly why she feared men, this casual cruelty, this assumption that they could take whatever they wanted. "The lady asked you to let her go." The deep voice cut through the alley like a knife. Lucas Northridge stood at the entrance, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading light. Behind him were two of his cowboys. The miner holding Eliza's arm sneered. "This ain't your business, Northridge. I'm making it my business." Lucas's voice remained level, but there was steel beneath the calm. "Now let her go." "Or what?" the miner challenged. The answer came in the form of Lucas's fist connecting with the man's jaw. The miner staggered back, releasing Eliza. The other two men lunged forward, but Lucas's cowboys intercepted them. The brief fight ended with the miners sprawled in the dirt. Lucas turned to Eliza, who was pressed against the wall, trembling. "Are you hurt?" he asked, keeping a respectful distance. She shook her head, unable to speak. "Let me walk you back to the boarding house." Eliza nodded, too shaken to refuse. As they walked, Lucas kept pace beside her without touching her. His men trailed a few steps behind. "Thank you," she finally managed when they reached the boarding house steps. Lucas nodded. "No thanks needed." Those men deserved worse than they got. He hesitated. "Miss Dawson, I hope this incident hasn't frightened you further. Not all men behave that way." Eliza looked up at him, studying his face in the lamplight. For the first time, she noticed the crow's feet around his eyes, the lines etched by sun and wind rather than cruelty. "I know," she said softly, though she wasn't entirely convinced. "Good night, Miss Dawson. Please consider my offer. You would be safe at Northridge Ranch." As Lucas walked away, Eliza found herself wondering if perhaps there was one man in the world who could be trusted after all. The next morning, Eliza was sweeping the front porch when she overheard a conversation between two women walking past. "Did you hear about Lucas Northridge defending that boarding house girl in the alley? Knocked Jim Peterson flat on his back. Well, that's Lucas for you. Ever since his wife died, he's appointed himself protector of every helpless creature in the territory. It's been, 4 years now? You'd think he'd be looking to remarry. They say he still wears Sarah's locket around his neck. That man loved her something fierce." Their voices faded as they walked on, but their words lingered in Eliza's mind. A widower who still mourned his wife. A man known for protecting the vulnerable. Later that day, as Eliza was hanging laundry in the backyard, Lucas Northridge approached from the direction of the stables. "Miss Dawson," he greeted her, stopping a respectful distance away. "How are you today?" "Better, thank you." She continued pinning sheets to the line, keeping her hands busy. "I appreciate what you did yesterday," he nodded. "I'm glad I was there." He leaned against the fence post. "Have you given any more thought to my offer?" Eliza paused, a wet sheet dripping in her hands. "I have. And—" She took a deep breath. "I'm afraid of men, Mr. Northridge." The words came out in a whisper, but once spoken, they seemed to hang in the air between them. Lucas didn't laugh or dismiss her fear. Instead, he regarded her with understanding. "You have reason to be." She nodded, unable to elaborate. "Then fear me last," he said quietly. "Come to Northridge Ranch, Miss Dawson. Give me a chance to prove that not all men deserve your fear. And if I ever give you reason to be afraid of me, Mrs. Peterson will welcome you back with open arms." Eliza studied him, searching for deception in his blue eyes and finding none. "Double the pay?" she asked, her voice still uncertain. A small smile touched his lips. "Double the pay and Sundays off unless there's an emergency." She took a deep breath. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning, if that suits you." It was done. With those simple words, Eliza had committed herself to a path that terrified her. Yet as she watched Lucas Northridge walk away, his stride confident but not threatening, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years' hope. Dawn broke cold and clear the next day. Eliza stood on the boarding house porch with her single carpet bag, saying goodbye to Mrs. Peterson. "You're making the right choice," the older woman assured her. "Lucas Northridge is one of the good ones." "So everyone keeps telling me," Eliza murmured, still not entirely convinced. The sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Lucas rode at the front of a small procession, 2 wagons and 3 mounted cowboys. He dismounted smoothly, approaching the porch with his hat in hand. "Good morning, Miss Dawson. Are you ready?" Eliza nodded, unable to trust her voice. Mrs. Peterson embraced her, then gently pushed her toward the steps. Lucas offered his hand to help her into the lead wagon, but Eliza pretended not to notice, climbing up on her own. If he was offended, he didn't show it. Instead, he merely handed her bag to the cowboy driving the wagon, then mounted his horse. "It's about 4 hours to the ranch," he explained. "We'll stop midway to rest the horses." The journey began in silence. Eliza sat stiffly beside the driver, a weathered man introduced as Charlie Baker. He seemed to sense her discomfort with conversation and focused on his driving, only occasionally pointing out landmarks. The Wyoming landscape stretched around them, vast and beautiful in its rugged way. Rolling hills gave way to dramatic buttes, and the distant mountains loomed blue against the sky. Despite her anxiety, Eliza found herself captivated by the wild beauty. As promised, they stopped after 2 hours at a small creek. The men tended to the horses while Eliza stretched her legs, keeping a careful distance from the group. Lucas approached, carrying a canteen. "Water." She accepted it with a murmured thank you, taking care not to let their fingers touch. "The ranch is just beyond that ridge," he said, pointing to a distant line of hills. "Once we're over it, you'll be able to see the valley where the main house sits." Eliza nodded, scanning the empty landscape. "It's very remote." "It is," Lucas agreed. "That bothers you?" "No," she lied. His expression suggested he knew better, but he didn't challenge her. "We should reach the ranch in time for a late lunch. Mrs. Winters will have something prepared." The journey resumed, and as they crested the ridge Lucas had pointed out, Eliza's breath caught. Below them lay a verdant valley cradled by hills, with a creek winding through it like a silver ribbon. Nestled in the center was a sprawling ranch house, surrounded by outbuildings, corrals, and fenced pastures where cattle grazed. Smoke curled from the chimney, and even from a distance it looked peaceful. "Welcome to Northridge Ranch," Lucas said, riding alongside the wagon. Pride was evident in his voice. "What do you think?" "It's beautiful," Eliza admitted truthfully. As they descended into the valley, details became clearer. The main house was larger than she'd expected, built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. The bunkhouse stood a respectful distance away, along with a barn, stables, and other outbuildings. Everything was neat and well maintained. A plump woman in her 60s emerged from the house as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. Behind her came a young girl of about 10, bouncing with excitement. Lucas dismounted as soon as they reached the yard, lifting the child, who ran to him. "Emma, have you been good for Mrs. Winters?" "Yes, Uncle Lucas. Did you bring me something from town?" "Emma Manners," chided the older woman, coming to stand beside them. Lucas set the girl down and turned to help Eliza from the wagon, but again she managed on her own. "Mrs. Winters, Emma, this is Miss Eliza Dawson, our new housekeeper." Miss Dawson, my housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, and my niece, Emma Northridge. Eliza blinked in surprise. No one had mentioned a child living at the ranch. Emma studied her with undisguised curiosity. "Are you afraid of horses, Miss Dawson?" "You looked scared in the wagon." "Emma," Mrs. Winters scolded. "It's all right," Eliza assured them. "I'm not afraid of horses, Emma, just getting used to new surroundings." Lucas touched his niece's shoulder gently. "Why don't you show Miss Dawson to her room while I speak with Mrs. Winters?" "She'll be staying in the room next to yours." Emma beamed. "Come on, Miss Dawson. You can see my kittens, too." For the first time since arriving, Eliza felt a genuine smile touch her lips. Children, at least, were straightforward in their intentions. The inside of the ranch house was as impressive as the outside, surprisingly elegant for a frontier home. Polished wooden floors, comfortable furniture, and touches that spoke of a woman's hand in the decorating. Emma led her up a wide staircase to a hallway with several doors. "This is your room," the child announced, pushing open a door. "Mine is right next door, and Uncle Lucas is across the hall if you need anything." Eliza stepped into a pleasant bedroom with a large window overlooking the valley. A simple but attractive quilt covered the bed, and a rocking chair sat in the corner near a small fireplace. It was more comfortable than any room she'd had since leaving her childhood home. "It's lovely," she said, setting down her bag. Emma bounced on her toes. "Uncle Lucas had Mrs. Winters air it out yesterday. He said we needed to make a good impression." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Did he now?" Emma mmm. "He said you were nervous as a newborn fawn and we shouldn't do anything to spook you." Despite herself, Eliza laughed. "Did your uncle also tell you it's not polite to repeat private conversations?" Emma looked chagrined. "Maybe, but I'm glad you're here. It's mostly just me, Mrs. Winters, and Uncle Lucas in the house, and Uncle Lucas is always working." "What about your parents?" Eliza asked gently. Sadness flickered across Emma's young face. "They died when I was 6. Cholera. Uncle Lucas has taken care of me ever since." Before Eliza could respond, footsteps in the hallway announced Lucas's arrival. "Emma, are you talking poor Miss Dawson's ear off already?" "No, Uncle Lucas," Emma protested. "I was just telling her about showing me the room," Eliza interjected, sparing the child. "It's very nice." Lucas smiled at his niece. "Mrs. Winters needs help with lunch. Why don't you go down while I explain Miss Dawson's duties?" Once Emma had scampered off, Lucas remained in the doorway, maintaining a respectful distance. "I hope the room is satisfactory." "It's more than satisfactory," Eliza admitted. "You have a lovely home, Mr. Northridge." "Thank you." He glanced around. "This was my sister-in-law's sewing room. My brother and his wife lived here with me and my wife before." He trailed off. "Well, before they passed. Emma told me. I'm sorry for your loss, both losses," she added, remembering the conversation she'd overheard in town. Lucas nodded, his expression momentarily vulnerable before his composure returned. "Your duties will be straightforward, keeping the house clean, doing laundry, helping Mrs. Winters when needed. Emma's old enough to handle most of her own care, but she could use a woman's guidance sometimes." "I'm not sure I'm qualified to guide anyone," Eliza said honestly. A small smile touched his lips. "You underestimate yourself, Miss Dawson." He straightened, becoming businesslike again. "You'll have Sundays off, as promised. Saturdays are half days unless there's a special need. Your meals will be with us in the main dining room." "That's fine," Eliza said, though the prospect of regular meals with Lucas made her nervous. "One more thing," Lucas added, his expression serious. "My men know better than to bother the women who work here. If anyone ever makes you uncomfortable, you come to me immediately." "Understood," Eliza nodded, touched despite herself by his concern. "Good. Lunch will be ready shortly. Take some time to settle in." With that, he left, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Alone at last, Eliza sank onto the bed, feeling overwhelmed. 24 hours ago, she'd been in town, in her safe little attic room. Now she was miles from anywhere, in the home of a man she barely knew. A man who, despite his courtesy, was still a man and therefore not to be trusted completely. Yet there was Emma, a child who needed a woman's guidance, and there was the undeniable fact that Lucas Northridge had treated her with nothing but respect. Could she perhaps find a place here? A temporary safe haven while she built up her savings? With a deep breath, Eliza unpacked her meager belongings, arranged her few dresses in the wardrobe, and placed her mother's silver hairbrush on the dresser. Then she splashed water on her face from the basin and went downstairs to face her new life. The kitchen was warm and fragrant with the smell of fresh bread when Eliza entered. Mrs. Winters was directing Emma in setting the table while simultaneously checking something in the oven. "Ah, there you are, dear," the older woman greeted her, "just in time to help with the serving. Lucas likes a simple table, nothing fancy, but we do sit down properly for meals." "Of course," Eliza said, falling easily into the role of helper. This, at least, was familiar territory. Lucas joined them a few minutes later, having washed up from his morning's work. At the table he sat at the head, with Emma to his right and Mrs. Winters to his left. Eliza took the remaining chair, feeling awkward. "Miss Dawson, would you like to say grace?" Lucas asked. Surprised, Eliza bowed her head and offered a simple blessing for the meal. When she looked up, Lucas was regarding her with that same curious expression she'd noticed at the boarding house. "You have a lovely speaking voice," he commented. "Emma, pass the potatoes to Miss Dawson, please." Lunch was a more comfortable affair than Eliza had expected. Emma chattered about her kittens and her lessons, while Mrs. Winters discussed the household needs with Lucas. Eliza remained quiet, observing the easy familiarity between the three of them. After the meal, Mrs. Winters showed Eliza around the house, explaining her duties in detail. The tour ended in the kitchen, where the older woman poured them each a cup of tea. "Lucas is a good man," Mrs. Winters said without preamble. "He's been through more than his share of heartache, but he's never let it make him bitter." Eliza sipped her tea, unsure how to respond. "I know that look in your eyes, girl. I had it myself once." The older woman's gaze was direct but kind. "Men hurt you and now you're afraid of them all." "I have reason to be," Eliza said defensively. Mrs. Winters nodded. "Most women who fear men do, but Lucas won't hurt you." "That's not who he is. You seem very certain." "I've known him since he was born," Mrs. Winters said simply. "Helped bring him into this world, watched him grow from a boy to a man, saw how he loved his Sarah, how he's raised Emma since his brother died. Lucas Northridge is the finest man I know." Eliza stared into her teacup. "I'm not looking for a husband, Mrs. Winters, just employment." The older woman chuckled. "Did I suggest otherwise? I'm simply telling you that you're safe here, that's all." But something in Mrs. Winters' eyes suggested she meant more than she was saying. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of activity as Eliza learned the rhythms of the ranch house. By evening, she was exhausted but more settled than she'd expected to be. After dinner, she retreated to her room early, intending to write a letter to Mrs. Peterson. She was at her small desk when a knock at the door startled her. "Yes, Miss Dawson, it's Emma. May I come in?" Eliza opened the door to find the child in her nightgown, clutching a kitten. "Is everything all right?" Emma nodded. "I just wanted to show you Shadow. He's my favorite kitten." The black fluff ball in her arms mewed softly, fixing Eliza with luminous yellow eyes. "He's beautiful," Eliza said, genuinely charmed. "Would you like to hold him?" Before Eliza could answer, Emma had deposited the kitten in her arms. Shadow immediately began purring, kneading his tiny paws against her chest. "He likes you," Emma said approvingly. "Shadow's a good judge of character. That's what Uncle Lucas says." "Does he?" Eliza scratched the kitten's ears, earning louder purrs. "Mmmm." "Uncle Lucas says animals can sense good people." Emma sat on the edge of Eliza's bed, swinging her feet. "Why are you afraid of men, Miss Dawson?" The direct question caught Eliza off guard. "What makes you think I am?" "I heard Uncle Lucas telling Mrs. Winters. He said you were skittish around men and we should all be extra gentle with you." Eliza sighed, reminding herself that children couldn't be expected to maintain confidences. "Some men have been unkind to me in the past," she said carefully. "It makes me wary." Emma considered this. "My papa was kind, and Uncle Lucas is the kindest man in the whole world." "I'm sure he is," Eliza said, not wanting to diminish the child's obvious adoration of her uncle. "He gets sad sometimes," Emma continued, "when he thinks I'm not looking. Mrs. Winters says it's because he still misses Aunt Sarah." Eliza stroked the kitten, unsure how to respond to these confidences. "You have a sweetheart, Miss Dawson." "No," Eliza said, perhaps too firmly. "I don't. Uncle Lucas doesn't either, not since Aunt Sarah died." Emma's face brightened. "Maybe you could be his sweetheart." "Emma." Eliza felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's not. I'm your uncle's employee, not a potential sweetheart." "But you're pretty," Emma insisted. "And nice. And Uncle Lucas smiled more at dinner tonight than he has in ages." "Emma Northridge, it's past your bedtime." Lucas's voice from the doorway made them both jump. How long he'd been standing there, Eliza couldn't tell, but his expression was unreadable. Emma hopped off the bed. "I was just showing Miss Dawson my kitten, so I see." Lucas's tone softened. "But it's time for bed now. Say good night." "Good night, Miss Dawson." Emma retrieved Shadow from Eliza's arms. "See you at breakfast." Once Emma had disappeared into her room, Lucas lingered in the doorway. "I apologize for the interruption." Emma can be enthusiastic about new people. "It's fine," Eliza assured him, trying to determine if he'd overheard his niece's matchmaking attempts. "She's a delightful child, she is." Pride and love were evident in his voice. "She's also too imaginative for her own good sometimes. Don't let her overwhelm you." "I won't." He studied her for a moment. "You seem more comfortable here than I expected." "It's a lovely home," Eliza said honestly, "and Emma makes it hard to remain tense." A genuine smile touched his lips. "That she does." He straightened. "Well, good night, Miss Dawson. Sleep well." "Good night, Mr. Northridge." After he left, Eliza sat on her bed, reflecting on the day. It had gone better than she dared to hope. The ranch was beautiful, her room comfortable, and her duties clear. Mrs. Winters seemed kind, and Emma was a breath of fresh air, and Lucas Northridge. He remained an enigma. A man who inspired devotion in his household. A man who had defended her without hesitation. A man who kept a respectful distance at all times, as if he understood her fears without her having to explain them. For the first time in years, Eliza fell asleep without checking that her door was locked. Days at Northridge Ranch soon fell into a comfortable pattern. Eliza rose early to help Mrs. Winters with breakfast. Mornings were spent cleaning and doing laundry, while afternoons often included helping Emma with her needlework or reading lessons when the child wasn't occupied with her tutor, who came 3 days a week from town. Lucas was often absent during daylight hours, riding out to check on his cattle or handle ranch business. But he always returned for dinner, and those evening meals became the centerpiece of each day. Emma would chatter about her lessons, Mrs. Winters would discuss household matters, and occasionally Lucas would share news from town or stories about the cattle. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Eliza found herself relaxing in Lucas's presence. He never raised his voice, never made sudden movements around her, and always maintained a respectful distance. Yet there was a warmth in his blue eyes when they rested on her that made her increasingly uncomfortable, not with fear, but with an awareness she didn't want to acknowledge. 2 weeks after her arrival, Eliza was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard a commotion from the direction of the corrals. Men were shouting, and a horse was screaming in pain. Without thinking, she dropped the wet sheet and ran toward the sound. A group of cowboys surrounded a corral where a beautiful chestnut mare lay thrashing on the ground, one leg clearly broken. Lucas knelt beside the horse, his face grim as he examined the injury. "It's too bad, boss," one cowboy was saying. "Have to put her down." Lucas nodded, his expression pained. "Get my rifle, Charlie," Eliza gasped, the sound drawing Lucas's attention. He stood, his face softening slightly when he saw her. "Miss Dawson, you shouldn't be here." "What happened?" she asked, approaching the fence. "Snowfire spooked during training, put her leg in a gopher hole." Lucas's voice was heavy with regret. "The break is too severe." "You're going to kill her." Eliza couldn't keep the horror from her voice. "It's the kindest thing," Lucas explained gently. "She's in pain, and a horse can't survive with 3 legs." Charlie returned with a rifle. Lucas took it, checking that it was loaded. "Wait," Eliza said impulsively. "Let me say goodbye to her, please." Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful, she's in pain and might strike out." Eliza slipped through the corral fence, approaching the injured horse slowly. The mare's eyes were wide with fear and pain, but something in Eliza's quiet approach seemed to calm her. Kneeling beside the horse's head, Eliza stroked her neck gently. "I'm sorry, beautiful girl," she murmured. "I'm so sorry." To everyone's surprise, the mare quieted under Eliza's touch, her breathing slowing. After a few minutes, Eliza stood, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said to Lucas, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. "You can do it now." "Charlie, take Miss Dawson back to the house," Lucas ordered quietly. "No," Eliza said firmly. "I'll stay." Lucas studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Stand back, then." Eliza moved away but kept her eyes on the mare as Lucas positioned himself carefully. The shot, when it came, was sudden and final. The mare's suffering ended instantly. Eliza didn't realize she was crying until Lucas touched her elbow gently, guiding her away from the corral. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said softly. She wiped her eyes. "It was merciful, I understand." They walked back toward the house in silence. At the steps, Lucas paused. "You have a way with animals. Snowfire was in a panic until you touched her." "I've always loved horses," Eliza admitted. "My father taught me to ride when I was small before he—" She trailed off, not wanting to complete the sentence. "Before he what?" Lucas prompted gently. Eliza took a deep breath. "Before he left us. My mother, my brother, and me. He just disappeared one day. We never saw him again." Lucas's expression darkened. "I'm sorry." "No man worthy of the name abandons his family." The conviction in his voice was so strong that Eliza found herself wanting to tell him more about her brother's death, about the men who had made her fear their entire gender. But the words stuck in her throat. "Thank you for letting me say goodbye to her," she said instead. Lucas nodded. "You have a gentle heart, Miss Dawson. It's a rare quality." Before Eliza could respond, Emma came running from the house, calling her name. "Miss Dawson, Mrs. Winters says to tell you the bread is rising too fast." With a quick nod to Lucas, Eliza hurried inside, grateful for the interruption. Something about the way he looked at her with respect and something deeper was becoming harder to resist. That night, Eliza dreamed of her brother Thomas for the first time in months. In the dream, he was smiling, telling her it was all right to trust again. She woke with tears on her cheeks, the memory of his voice so vivid it hurt. Unable to return to sleep, she wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and crept downstairs to make a cup of tea. The house was silent, everyone long since retired. Or so she thought until she entered the kitchen and found Lucas sitting at the table, a glass of whiskey before him, staring into the dying embers of the kitchen fire. He looked up when she entered, surprise flashing across his face. "Miss Dawson." "Is everything all right?" "Yes," she said quickly. "I just couldn't sleep. I was going to make some tea." Lucas stood. "Please allow me." "There's no need, I insist." He moved to put the kettle on the stove. "I couldn't sleep either." Eliza sat at the table, watching as he efficiently prepared tea. There was something intimate about the scene, the two of them alone in the dim kitchen, the rest of the house asleep. "Nightmares?" he asked quietly, setting a steaming cup before her. She nodded, surprised by his perception. "How did you know? Your eyes." He resumed his seat across from her. "I recognize the look. I have them too sometimes." "About your wife?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "I'm sorry, that's too personal. It's all right." Lucas took a sip of his whiskey. "Sometimes about Sarah. Sometimes about the war you fought," he nodded. "Union cavalry, I saw things no man should see." His gaze grew distant. "When I came home, this land saved me. The open spaces, the honest work, it healed something broken inside me." Eliza wrapped her hands around her teacup, absorbing its warmth. "Your ranch is beautiful." "It is." Pride crept into his voice. "My brother and I built it together, started with nothing but a claim and a few head of cattle. You must miss him. Every day." Lucas studied her across the table. "And you? What were your nightmares about?" Eliza hesitated, then decided that in this quiet, intimate moment she could share a piece of her truth. "My brother Thomas. He died protecting me from some miners who had too much to drink. They wanted. Well, you can imagine what they wanted. Thomas tried to stop them. They beat him so badly he never woke up." Lucas's knuckles whitened around his glass. "I'm sorry, Eliza." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and somehow it felt right in this moment. "It was 3 years ago," she continued, the words spilling out now. "After that, I went to work as a maid for a wealthy family in Cheyenne. The master of the house, he wouldn't leave me alone. His wife blamed me when she found out. I fled in the middle of the night with just the clothes on my back." "And you ended up in redemption." Eliza nodded. "Mrs. Peterson gave me a chance when no one else would." Lucas was silent for a long moment. "Thank you for telling me," he finally said. "I understand your fear better now." "Do you?" She looked up, meeting his gaze. "Yes." His eyes held nothing but compassion. "And I swear to you, Eliza, you have nothing to fear from me or any man on this ranch. You're safe here." She believed him, she realized with a start. Somehow, in the space of a few short weeks, Lucas Northridge had begun to chip away at the walls she'd built around her heart. "Thank you," she whispered, "for understanding, for not dismissing my fears." "Your fears are based on experience," he said simply. "Only new experiences can change them." They sat in companionable silence for a while longer, finishing their drinks. Eventually, Eliza stood. "I should try to get some sleep." Lucas rose as well. "May I walk you to your room?" She nodded, surprised by how natural it felt to walk beside him up the stairs, their footsteps quiet in the sleeping house. At her door, he stopped, maintaining a respectful distance. "Good night, Eliza. I hope you sleep peacefully." "Good night, Lucas." After he left, Eliza leaned against her closed door, heart racing. She had shared her darkest memories with him, and he had responded with understanding, not judgment. And for the first time, she had used his given name. Something was changing between them, something Eliza wasn't sure she was ready for. The next day brought an unexpected development. As Eliza was dusting the library, she heard the sound of approaching horses. Looking out the window, she saw a wagon pulling into the yard, driven by a handsome woman in her 30s. Beside her sat a distinguished-looking older man. Lucas emerged from the barn to greet them, his manner warm but formal. Curious, Eliza moved closer to the window, watching as Lucas helped the woman down from the wagon with a courteous hand. "Who are they?" Emma's voice behind her made Eliza jump. "I don't know," Eliza admitted. "Your uncle seems to know them, though." Emma peered out the window, then scrunched her nose. "That's Miss Adler and her father, Judge Adler from town. She's always bringing Uncle Lucas pies and asking him to escort her to socials." There was a distinct note of disapproval in Emma's voice that made Eliza hide a smile. "Is that so, Mrs. Winters says she's setting her cap for Uncle Lucas, but I don't think he likes her that way." "Emma, it's not polite to gossip," Eliza admonished gently, even as she felt an unexpected twinge of something. Surely not jealousy. That would be absurd. The front door opened and Lucas's voice carried through the house. "Emma, Miss Dawson, we have guests." Emma sighed dramatically. Coming Uncle Lucas in the parlor, the visitors were already seated when Eliza and Emma entered. Lucas made the introductions. "Judge Adler, Miss Adler. This is my niece, Emma, and our housekeeper, Miss Dawson. Miss Dawson, Judge Frederick Adler and his daughter, Miss Rebecca Adler." Rebecca Adler was indeed very attractive, with golden hair arranged in an elegant style and a fashionable dress that made Eliza acutely aware of her own plain work clothes. The judge was silver-haired and distinguished, with keen eyes that assessed Eliza thoroughly. "A pleasure," Miss Adler said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Lucas has been in need of proper household help for some time." Eliza bristled internally at the implied criticism but kept her expression neutral. "It's a lovely home. I'm happy to be here." Lucas caught her eye briefly, a hint of amusement in his gaze suggesting he'd noted the undercurrent. "Miss Dawson joined us a few weeks ago from Redemption. She's been a tremendous help, especially with Emma's education." "How charming," Miss Adler replied. "Though I understand you employ a proper tutor as well. Mr. Jensen comes 3 times weekly," Lucas confirmed. "But Miss Dawson has been supplementing Emma's reading and needlework admirably." Judge Adler cleared his throat. "We've come on business, Lucas. The railroad survey is complete, and they're pressing forward with the spur line that will cross the northern edge of your property." Lucas's expression grew serious. "I see. And the compensation they're offering, fair in my estimation," the judge replied. "I've brought the papers for your review." As the men discussed business, Rebecca Adler turned her attention to Eliza. "Where are you from originally, Miss Dawson? Your accent suggests somewhere east." "Pennsylvania," Eliza answered, uncomfortable under the woman's scrutiny. "And what brought you all the way to Wyoming territory?" "Family, opportunity," Eliza said simply, unwilling to share her history with this woman who clearly viewed her as a rival, though for what, Eliza wasn't entirely sure. Miss Adler smiled thinly. "Well, housekeeping is certainly an opportunity, though a woman of your age might be looking for more permanent arrangements." The implication was clear, and Eliza felt heat rise to her cheeks. Before she could formulate a response, Emma spoke up. "Miss Dawson is the best housekeeper we've ever had," she declared loyally. "And she can calm even the wildest horses. You should have seen her with Snowfire yesterday." Lucas looked up from his papers. "Emma, why don't you show Miss Adler the new kittens in the barn? I'm sure she'd enjoy seeing them." Emma looked like she wanted to refuse, but a gentle look from her uncle had her nodding reluctantly. "Yes, Uncle Lucas. This way, Miss Adler." Once they left, Lucas turned to Eliza. "Would you mind bringing us some coffee, Miss Dawson, and perhaps some of Mrs. Winter's apple cake if there's any left. Of course, Eliza replied, grateful for the excuse to escape. In the kitchen, Mrs. Winters was already preparing a tray. So the Adlers are here again, she commented, her tone neutral but her eyes knowing. Third visit this month. Business, apparently, Eliza said, arranging cups on the tray. Mrs. Winters snorted softly. The judge might have business. His daughter has other intentions. It's none of my concern, Eliza said, though the words tasted false even to her own ears. The older woman gave her a penetrating look. Isn't it? Eliza focused on cutting the cake. Mr. Northridge's personal affairs are his own. MMHMM, Mrs. Winters hummed noncommittally. Take them the coffee, dear, and don't let Rebecca Adler make you feel small. That woman has been trying to become the mistress of Northridge Ranch for 2 years now. When Eliza returned to the parlor with the tray, the men were deep in discussion about easement rights and compensation. She served the coffee quietly, avoiding Lucas's gaze, and was about to slip out when Judge Adler addressed her. Miss Dawson, Lucas tells me you're originally from Pennsylvania. Whereabouts? A small town outside Philadelphia, sir, Eliza answered, surprised by the question. I practiced law in Philadelphia for a time before the war, the judge said, studying her. Your accent reminds me of it. Educated family. My father was a school teacher, Eliza admitted, before he left. Understanding flashed in the judge's eyes. Ah. The war claimed many men, one way or another. It wasn't the war, sir. Eliza hadn't meant to say it, but something in the judge's assumption irritated her. He simply abandoned his responsibilities. Lucas was watching her with that intense gaze that seemed to see straight through her defenses. Miss Dawson has overcome significant hardship, he said quietly. She's a credit to her own strength of character. The unexpected compliment warmed Eliza to her toes. Thank you, Mr. Northridge, but I'm nothing special. If you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend to. She left them to their business, but Lucas's words and the approving look in his eyes stayed with her as she went about her chores. It was dangerous, this growing awareness between them. She was his employee, nothing more. And yet, when the Adlers departed late that afternoon, Eliza watched from an upstairs window as Lucas helped Rebecca into the wagon. The woman placed her hand on his arm, leaning in to say something that made Lucas smile politely. It was a proper, courteous exchange, yet Eliza couldn't help the knot of tension in her stomach. She wants to marry him, Emma said, suddenly appearing at Eliza's side. But Uncle Lucas doesn't love her. Eliza jumped. Emma, you startled me, and we shouldn't be spying. It's not spying. It's observing, Emma corrected with all the wisdom of her 10 years. And I know Uncle Lucas doesn't love Miss Adler because he never looks at her the way he looks at you. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. Emma, that's enough. Your uncle is my employer, nothing more. If you say so. Emma's tone was skeptical. But I think he likes you, and I think you like him too. Before Eliza could formulate a response, Emma skipped off down the hall, leaving her with unsettling thoughts she didn't want to examine too closely. That evening at dinner, Lucas seemed preoccupied, responding to Emma's chatter with distracted smiles. After the meal, he excused himself to his study, citing paperwork from the railroad deal. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect early autumn day. Eliza was hanging laundry when Lucas approached, dressed in riding clothes. Miss Dawson, he greeted her. I was wondering if you might join me this morning. Eliza paused, a wet sheet in her hands. Join you for a ride, he clarified. There's a part of the ranch I'd like to show you, if you're willing. Mrs. Winters can manage without you for a few hours. The invitation was unexpected but not unwelcome. After weeks at the ranch, Eliza had occasionally felt the desire to explore beyond the immediate surroundings of the house. I don't have riding clothes, she said, gesturing to her simple work dress. Emma has an old riding skirt that might fit you, Lucas suggested. It was her mother's. Half an hour later, Eliza found herself in the stable yard, wearing the borrowed riding skirt and a simple shirtwaist. Lucas had saddled 2 horses, his own bay gelding and a gentle gray mare. "This is Moonlight," he said, patting the gray's neck. "She's even tempered and smooth-gaited. I think you'll find her comfortable." Eliza approached the mare, stroking her velvety nose. "She's beautiful." "Can you mount on your own, or would you like assistance?" Lucas asked. Pride made her want to refuse help, but practicality won out. "Assistance, please. It's been some years since I rode." Lucas's hands were strong and respectful as he boosted her into the side saddle. For a moment, his face was close to hers, and Eliza caught the scent of him: leather, soap, and something indefinably masculine. Her heart quickened as their eyes met briefly before he stepped back. Once mounted himself, Lucas led them away from the ranch buildings, taking a trail that wound through a stand of cottonwoods along the creek. They rode in comfortable silence at first, Eliza adjusting to the rhythm of the horse beneath her, memories of childhood rides with her father flooding back. "You sit a horse well," Lucas observed after a while. "It's clearly not your first time riding." "My father taught me when I was young," Eliza explained. "I loved it then. I'd forgotten how freeing it feels." Lucas smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "That's exactly why I wanted to bring you out here. There's something about seeing this land from horseback that can't be matched." As they crested a small rise, Eliza gasped. Spread before them was a vista of rolling grassland, dotted with wildflowers and framed by distant mountains. The morning light bathed everything in a golden glow, and the vastness of it made her feel simultaneously small and part of something immense. "It's breathtaking," she murmured. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch," Lucas said, pulling his horse to a stop beside hers. "I come here when I need to think, or to remember what matters." Eliza glanced at him, struck by the openness in his expression. "And what does matter, Mr. Northridge?" "Lucas," he corrected gently. "After our midnight conversation, I think we can dispense with formalities, at least when we're alone." "Lucas," she amended, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "What matters?" He considered the question seriously. "Family, honor, building something that will outlast me. Leaving the world better than I found it." He turned to look at her directly. "And you, Eliza, what matters to you?" The question caught her off guard. For so long, survival had been her only goal. "Safety," she said honestly. "Independence, not having to rely on anyone who might betray me." Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Understandable given what you've been through, but is that enough to merely survive?" "It has been," she said softly, "until recently." "And now," Eliza looked out over the landscape, gathering her thoughts. "Now I find myself wanting more connections. Purpose, maybe even happiness." "I'm glad," Lucas said simply. He dismounted, then came to help her down. "I thought we might rest the horses for a bit. There's a stream just beyond those trees where they can drink." Eliza allowed him to lift her from the saddle, his hand strong at her waist. When her feet touched the ground, he didn't immediately step back, and for a breathless moment, they stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Thank you," she murmured, stepping back, unsure if she was thanking him for the help or for bringing her to this beautiful place. They walked the horses to the stream, letting them drink while they stood in comfortable silence. Lucas spread a small blanket on the grass and they sat, maintaining a respectful distance. "The Adlers seem to think highly of you," Eliza ventured, curious despite herself. Lucas gave her a sidelong glance, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Judge Adler is a good man, a fair judge." "His daughter is." Beautiful, Eliza supplied when he hesitated. Yes, he agreed, and accomplished, but not someone I can imagine sharing my life with. Oh, Eliza tried to sound merely curious rather than invested in his answer. Lucas plucked a stem of grass, twirling it between his fingers. Rebecca Adler wants to be the wife of the largest rancher in the county. She's not interested in the work that entails, or in Emma, or in me as a person rather than a position. You seem very certain of that. I am. His gaze was direct. Just as I'm certain that what happened between us last night, that conversation in the kitchen, meant something to both of us. Eliza's breath caught. Lucas, I'm not pushing, he said quickly. I understand your hesitation, your fear, I respect it. But I want you to know that my interest in you is not as an employer to an employee. It's as a man who sees a woman of extraordinary strength and grace. The words hung between them, honest and unvarnished. Eliza struggled to formulate a response that acknowledged his feelings without promising what she wasn't sure she could give. I don't know if I can ever trust a man completely, she finally said. Even you, though you've given me no reason to doubt you. I know, Lucas said gently. And I'm not asking for your trust all at once, just for the chance to earn it day by day. A sudden gust of wind blew a strand of hair across Eliza's face. Before she could brush it away, Lucas reached out, hesitated, then carefully tucked it behind her ear when she didn't flinch from his touch. We should head back, he said, standing and offering his hand. Mrs. Winters will have lunch waiting. Eliza took his hand, allowing him to help her up. The touch lingered a moment longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in their relationship. As they rode back to the ranch, side by side, Eliza felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the tentative unfurling of hope, like a tightly closed bud sensing the approach of spring. The days that followed took on a new dimension. On the surface, nothing changed. Eliza continued her duties. Lucas ran the ranch, and they maintained a proper distance in front of others. But there were moments, a glance across the dinner table, fingers brushing when passing a dish, quiet conversations in the library after Emma had gone to bed that spoke of deepening connection. 2 weeks after their ride, Eliza was in the kitchen garden, harvesting the last of the summer vegetables, when she heard approaching riders. Looking up, she saw Lucas returning with several of his men, all of them covered in dust and looking grim. She set down her basket and went to meet them, concern rising at their expressions. What's happened? Lucas dismounted, his face tight with worry. Rustlers. They hit the north pasture last night, drove off about 50 head of cattle. Were any of the men hurt? No, thank God, Lucas said. But they left a warning nailed to a tree. This is just the beginning. We've had trouble with a gang operating in these parts, led by a man named Jackson Blackwell. Sounds like his work. The name sent a chill through Eliza. Blackwell, are you sure? Lucas's eyes sharpened on her face. You know the name? She hesitated, then nodded. The man who employed me in Cheyenne, the one who wouldn't leave me alone, his name was Blackwell. Arthur Blackwell. Lucas's expression darkened. Jackson Blackwell's brother. Arthur was always the respectable one while Jackson turned outlaw. He touched her arm gently. This may be a coincidence, or it may not be, Eliza said, fear curling in her stomach. What if he knows I'm here? What if he's coming for me? Then he'll have to come through me first, Lucas said, his voice hard with determination. But let's not borrow trouble. This could simply be about cattle. Despite his reassurance, Lucas doubled the guards around the ranch house that night and instructed his men to ride in pairs when checking the herds. Eliza found it difficult to sleep, jumping at every sound, wondering if her past had finally caught up with her. The next morning, Lucas rode out early with most of his men, leaving 2 trusted hands to guard the house. Eliza went about her chores with a sense of dread, constantly checking the windows for approaching riders. Mid-afternoon, as she was helping Emma with her reading, they heard galloping hooves approaching. Both rushed to the window to see one of Lucas's cowboys riding hard toward the house, his horse lathered with sweat. "Stay here," Eliza instructed Emma firmly, hurrying downstairs. "Mrs. Winters was already at the door when the cowboy, a young man named Tom, staggered in, blood seeping through his shirt from a wound on his shoulder. "They ambushed us," he gasped as Mrs. Winters helped him to a chair. "Up in Coyote Canyon. 6 men. Boss sent me to warn you they're coming here." Fear gripped Eliza's heart. "Lucas, is he alive when I left?" Tom assured her, fighting back with the others. But Blackwell, he said he'd come for the boss's woman, said it was personal now. Mrs. Winters shot Eliza a sharp look. "Get my medical kit, then go to Lucas's study. Second drawer of his desk, there's a revolver." Eliza ran to comply, her mind racing. The boss's woman. Blackwell knew she was here, knew she was important to Lucas. Was this about stolen cattle or about her? Either way, men were coming, violent men with vengeance on their minds. After retrieving the medical supplies for Mrs. Winters, Eliza went to Lucas's study. The revolver was where Mrs. Winters had said, a well-maintained Smith & Wesson. Eliza checked that it was loaded, her hands steadier than she would have expected. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was young, another skill she'd nearly forgotten. Emma appeared in the doorway, her young face pale with fear. "Miss Dawson, what's happening?" Eliza tucked the revolver into her skirt pocket. "Some bad men are causing trouble," she explained, trying to keep her voice calm. "But we're going to be safe. I need you to go to Mrs. Winters in the kitchen and stay with her, all right?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Are they coming here, the bad men?" "They might," Eliza admitted. "But your uncle's men will protect us. Now go to Mrs. Winters, please." Once Emma was safely with the housekeeper, Eliza went to check on Tom. The young cowboy was pale from blood loss, but Mrs. Winters had bandaged his wound. "How many men did you say were with Blackwell?" Eliza asked. "5 that I saw," Tom answered. "But there could be more. Boss had 8 men with him. They were holding their own when I left, but Blackwell could have sent men ahead to the ranch," Eliza finished for him. "How long do we have? An hour, maybe less." Eliza's mind raced. The 2 hands Lucas had left behind were good men, but if Blackwell came in force, they would be outnumbered. She needed to get Emma and Mrs. Winters to safety. "The root cellar," she decided. "Mrs. Winters, you and Emma need to hide in the root cellar. It's stone with a heavy door. Take food, water, blankets." "What about you?" the older woman asked, her eyes shrewd. "I'll join you once I've warned the hands," Eliza said, though in truth, she had no intention of hiding if it meant Lucas might ride into a trap. 15 minutes later, with Emma and Mrs. Winters secured in the root cellar and the house's doors barricaded, Eliza stood on the porch with the 2 remaining cowboys watching the horizon. "Miss Dawson, you should join Mrs. Winters," urged Dave, the older of the 2 men. "We can handle this." Eliza gripped the revolver in her pocket. "No. I'm staying. This is partly because of me." "Because of you?" Dave looked confused. "It's complicated," Eliza said. "But I won't hide while men die on my behalf. Not again." A cloud of dust on the horizon ended the conversation. Riders were approaching, at least 4, maybe more. But they weren't coming fast, suggesting confidence rather than urgent attack. "Get inside, Miss Dawson," Dave ordered. "Sam, take the back. I'll cover the front." Eliza retreated inside but positioned herself near a window with a clear view of the approaching riders. As they drew closer, she could make out 4 men, with a 5th figure slumped over a saddle, apparently unconscious or wounded. Her heart stopped when she recognized Lucas as the bound figure. His head hung down, blood matting his hair, but even at a distance, she could see he was breathing. Relief and terror warred within her. The riders stopped about 50 yards from the house. A large man with a bushy black beard dismounted and stepped forward. "Hello, the house," he called. "I'm Jackson Blackwell, and I've got your boss here. Send out Eliza Dawson and nobody else gets hurt." Eliza's blood ran cold. So it was about her after all. Blackwell must have learned where she was from his brother, realized she was at the Northridge Ranch, and decided to kill two birds with one stone, steal Lucas's cattle, and take revenge on the woman who had humiliated his brother by escaping. Dave called back from his position. "The lady's not here, Blackwell. Rode to town this morning." "You're lying," Blackwell shouted, "and that's going to cost Northridge here." He walked to where Lucas was slumped over his saddle and struck him hard across the face. Lucas groaned but didn't raise his head. "Stop!" Eliza cried out before she could stop herself. Dave looked at her in horror. "Miss Dawson, no," but it was too late. Blackwell had heard her. "There she is," he crowed. "Come out, Miss Dawson, or the next one goes through Northridge's skull." To emphasize his point, he placed his revolver against Lucas's temple. "Don't do it, Miss Dawson," Dave pleaded. "The boss wouldn't want you sacrificing yourself." "And I won't let him die for me," Eliza said with calm certainty. She checked the revolver one last time. "But I'm not going out there unarmed." Before Dave could stop her, Eliza stepped onto the porch, keeping the revolver concealed in the folds of her skirt. "Let him go, Blackwell," she called. "Your quarrel is with me." Blackwell laughed, a cruel sound that carried across the yard. "The quarrel's with both of you now. My brother said you were a spirited one. Too bad you picked the wrong man to hide behind." "I'm not hiding," Eliza said, taking another step forward. "And Mr. Northridge has nothing to do with what happened between me and your brother." "He made it his business when he took you in," Blackwell snarled. "Now you're going to come with us nice and quiet, or I put a bullet in your lover's head." "He's not my lover," Eliza said, continuing to move forward slowly. "And I won't go anywhere until you release him." She was about 30 yards from Blackwell now, close enough to see the malice in his eyes. Lucas was stirring, raising his head slightly. Their eyes met, and she saw recognition followed by stark fear, not for himself but for her. "Eliza, no," he rasped. "Go back." Blackwell hit him again. "Shut up, Northridge. Stop hitting him," Eliza demanded, her hand tightening on the revolver. "Or what?" Blackwell laughed. "What's a little thing like you going to do about it?" Eliza drew the revolver and aimed it steadily at Blackwell's chest. "This." Surprise flashed across Blackwell's face, followed by amusement. "You think you can shoot me before I shoot him? Those are bad odds, girl." "Maybe," Eliza acknowledged, "but I'm willing to take them." "Are you?" The standoff lasted only seconds, but to Eliza it felt like hours. Then, from behind Blackwell, came the sound of approaching riders, many riders, moving fast. Blackwell turned, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening Lucas needed. Despite his bound hands, he threw himself sideways off his horse, crashing into Blackwell and sending them both to the ground. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Eliza ran forward, her focus solely on reaching Lucas. One of Blackwell's men moved to intercept her, but she fired without hesitation, the bullet striking his shoulder. He fell, clutching the wound. Chaos reigned as Lucas's cowboys galloped into the yard, exchanging fire with Blackwell's remaining men. Eliza reached Lucas, who was struggling with Blackwell on the ground. The outlaw was larger and stronger, but Lucas fought with desperate intensity. Eliza aimed the revolver. "Get off him, Blackwell," the outlaw looked up, hatred twisting his features. "You'll pay for this, bitch." He lunged for her, abandoning Lucas. Eliza fired, but in her haste, the bullet only grazed Blackwell's arm. He knocked the gun from her hand and grabbed her by the throat. "I was going to take my time with you," he snarled, his fingers tightening. "But now I'll just kill you quick." Eliza clawed at his hands, struggling to breathe. Through dimming vision, she saw Lucas rise behind Blackwell, his hands somehow free, his face a mask of cold fury. In one swift motion, he grabbed Blackwell's neck and twisted violently. The crack was audible even amid the gunfire. Blackwell's grip on Eliza's throat loosened, and he slumped to the ground, his neck broken. Lucas caught Eliza as her knees buckled. "Eliza, are you all right?" She nodded, gasping for air, unable to speak. Around them, the gunfire was dying down as Blackwell's remaining men fled or surrendered. Lucas pulled her close, his arms trembling as they wrapped around her. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured into her hair, "when I saw you step onto that porch." "I couldn't let him kill you," Eliza whispered hoarsely. "Not for me." "And I couldn't live if anything happened to you," Lucas said fiercely. "Do you understand? I love you, Eliza. I think I've loved you since the moment you told me to fear you last." The words, spoken amid the chaos of the aftermath, struck Eliza with the force of revelation. This man, this good, honorable man, loved her, and she, despite all her fears and defenses, loved him in return. "I love you too," she said, the words simpler than she would have expected. "I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself." Lucas cupped her face gently, his blue eyes intense. "Be afraid no longer, Eliza, not of me, not ever." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise amid the violence that surrounded them. When they broke apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "We need to check on Emma and Mrs. Winters, and I have some injuries that need tending." Eliza nodded, suddenly remembering the others. "They're in the root cellar, safe, I hope." Together, supporting each other, they made their way back to the house. The battle was over. Blackwell was dead, his gang scattered or captured. And something new had begun between Eliza and Lucas, something born of danger but promising a future of healing and love. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The sheriff arrived from town with a posse, taking statements and the captured outlaws into custody. Lucas's wounds, while painful, proved less serious than they had appeared. A gash on his head, bruised ribs, and rope burns on his wrists. Eliza tended to him personally, their newfound closeness acknowledged but kept discreet in front of others. Emma, once assured that both her uncle and Eliza were safe, appointed herself their guardian, watching over them with solemn attention that occasionally gave way to barely suppressed excitement. "Are you going to marry Uncle Lucas now?" she asked Eliza one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset while Lucas discussed ranch business with his foreman nearby. "Emma," Eliza exclaimed, glancing nervously at Lucas, who fortunately hadn't heard. That's not something we've discussed." "But you love him," Emma stated with childish certainty. "And he loves you. I heard him tell Mrs. Winters so." Warmth flooded Eliza's cheeks. "Relationships are complicated, Emma, especially for adults." "Because you're afraid of men?" Emma asked innocently. "But you're not afraid of Uncle Lucas anymore, are you?" Eliza considered the question seriously. "No," she said softly. "I'm not afraid of him, but marriage is a big step, and we've known each other such a short time." "When you know, you know," Emma said wisely, echoing something she'd clearly heard from an adult. Aunt Sarah used to say that about her and Uncle Lucas, that she knew the first time she saw him that they'd get married. The mention of Lucas's late wife might have made Eliza uncomfortable once, but now it only reinforced what she already knew: Lucas was capable of deep, abiding love. That he now directed that love toward her was both terrifying and exhilarating. Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Lucas found Eliza in the library, where she was organizing books that had been disturbed during the recent upheaval. "May I join you?" he asked, his deep voice sending a pleasant shiver down her spine. "Of course." He sat in a nearby armchair, watching her work for a moment before speaking. "I received a letter today from Arthur Blackwell." Eliza nearly dropped the book she was holding. "What? How?" "It seems news of his brother's death reached him quickly," Lucas explained. "The letter was delivered by a private courier." "What did it say?" Eliza asked, fear creeping back into her heart. Lucas's expression was grim. "He claims his brother was acting on his behalf, seeking to reclaim what was rightfully his, meaning you." "I was never his," Eliza said fiercely. "Never." "I know." Lucas's voice was gentle. "But men like Arthur Blackwell don't see women as people with their own will, only as possessions. Is he threatening to come here?" The thought made Eliza's blood run cold. "Not explicitly," Lucas said, "but there are veiled threats. He's a powerful man in Cheyenne with connections to corrupt officials. He could make trouble." Eliza set down the book she was holding, her hands trembling slightly. "Perhaps I should leave. Go somewhere he can't find me. I won't bring more danger to you and Emma." Lucas was on his feet in an instant, crossing to her and taking her hands in his. "No. Running is exactly what he wants, to isolate you, to make you vulnerable again. We face this together, Eliza. You're not alone anymore." She looked up into his earnest face, feeling the strength in his gentle grip. "What would you have me do? Marry me?" The words, spoken without preamble, left Eliza speechless. "I know it's sudden," Lucas continued, his voice low and intense. "And I would have preferred more romantic circumstances for this proposal. But I love you, Eliza. I want to build a life with you. And as my wife, you would have legal protections that Blackwell would find much harder to challenge. You want to marry me for my protection?" Eliza asked, unsure whether to be touched or offended. Lucas's lips curved in a small smile. "I want to marry you because I love you more than I thought possible after Sarah died. Because you make me laugh and think and feel alive again. Because Emma adores you. Because you faced down a gang of outlaws with more courage than most men I know." His expression grew serious. "The protection my name would offer is merely a practical consideration, not the reason." Eliza searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none, only love, respect, and a steadfast determination that moved her deeply. "Yes," she whispered, the word feeling right on her lips. "Yes, I'll marry you, Lucas." His kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with a passion that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "We'll be married as soon as possible," he said. "The circuit preacher comes through in 2 weeks. Is that too soon?" "It's perfect," Eliza assured him, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Though Mrs. Peterson in town will be disappointed to miss it." "We'll invite her," Lucas said simply. "And the Adlers, though I suspect Rebecca may decline." Eliza laughed, a free, joyous sound that she barely recognized as her own. "She most certainly will." The news of their engagement was met with reactions ranging from Emma's unrestrained joy to Mrs. Winter's knowing satisfaction to the amused congratulations of the ranch hands. Word spread quickly to town, and soon visitors began arriving with well wishes and gifts, and, Eliza suspected, curiosity about the woman who had captured the heart of Lucas Northridge. Among the visitors was Judge Adler, who came alone, his daughter conspicuously absent. He offered sincere congratulations and then, in a moment of privacy, spoke candidly to Eliza. "I know about Arthur Blackwell," he said quietly. "His reputation, at least. If he attempts any legal maneuvers against you or Lucas, I would consider it a personal favor if you would consult me first." The offer, unexpected and generous, moved Eliza deeply. "Thank you, Judge Adler. That means a great deal." The judge nodded. "Lucas Northridge is one of the finest men I know. I'm glad he's found happiness again. See that you take care of him, young lady." "I will," Eliza promised, touched by the older man's concern for Lucas. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Eliza found herself the center of attention in a way that would have terrified her months ago, but now felt almost natural. Mrs. Winters and Emma helped her sew a wedding dress of pale blue silk that Lucas had ordered from Denver, arriving just in time. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cool, a perfect early October day. Eliza stood at her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the hills she had come to love, reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this day. A soft knock at her door announced Mrs. Peterson, who had arrived the previous day from Redemption. "May I come in, dear?" Eliza welcomed her former employer with a warm hug. "I'm so glad you're here." Mrs. Peterson held her at arm's length, studying her face. "You look transformed, Eliza. There's a peace in your eyes I've never seen before." "I feel peaceful," Eliza admitted, "for the first time in years. Lucas has given me that gift, among so many others." "Love can heal many wounds," Mrs. Peterson said wisely. "Not all at once, perhaps, but gradually, with patience and understanding. Lucas Northridge seems like a man with an abundance of both." "He is," Eliza agreed, her heart full. The older woman patted her cheek. "Well, let's get you ready. Can't keep that fine man waiting at the altar now, can we?" With Mrs. Peterson and Mrs. Winters fussing over her dress and hair, and Emma bouncing with excitement, the morning passed quickly. Before Eliza knew it, it was time to descend to the main room, where Lucas and their guests awaited. Judge Adler had offered to walk her down the aisle. In the absence of any family of her own, an offer Eliza had accepted with gratitude. He waited for her at the bottom of the stairs, distinguished in his formal suit. "You look radiant, Miss Dawson," he said, offering his arm. "Ready to become Mrs. Northridge?" "More than ready," Eliza replied, taking his arm with a steady hand. The main room had been transformed for the occasion, with wildflowers and ribbons decorating every surface. A small gathering of friends and neighbors stood as Eliza entered on the judge's arm. But Eliza had eyes only for Lucas, who waited beside the traveling preacher, his expression a mixture of awe and love that took her breath away. He looked magnificent in his formal black suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his blue eyes shining as they fixed on her. As she approached, he extended his hand, and Judge Adler placed her hand in Lucas's, a symbolic gesture of giving that, to Eliza, represented not possession but partnership. "You're beautiful," Lucas whispered as she took her place beside him. "So are you," she whispered back, earning a warm smile. The ceremony itself was simple but deeply moving. When the time came to exchange vows, Lucas spoke with clear conviction, promising to love, honor, and cherish Eliza all the days of his life. Eliza, in turn, promised the same, her voice steady and sure. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "Mr. Northridge, you may kiss your bride." Lucas's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, drawing appreciative cheers from their guests. When they turned to face the gathering as husband and wife, Eliza felt a sense of rightness that overshadowed any lingering fears. Emma was the first to embrace them, throwing her arms around them both. "We're a real family now," she declared happily. "Yes, we are," Lucas agreed, his arm around Eliza's waist. "A real family." The celebration that followed was joyous, with food, music, and dancing. Lucas kept Eliza close, his hand often finding hers, his eyes frequently seeking her face as if to reassure himself that she was really there. really his wife. As the afternoon waned, Lucas whispered in her ear, "Ready to slip away?" Eliza nodded, her cheeks warming at the implication. They had agreed to spend their wedding night at the ranch, with a proper honeymoon to Denver planned for the following week when Emma could be safely left with Mrs. Winters and her tutor. They said their goodbyes to their guests, enduring good-natured teasing with grace, and then Lucas led Eliza upstairs to the master bedroom, a room she had cleaned many times, but never entered as its mistress. Inside, the room had been prepared for them: fresh flowers in vases, the large four-poster bed made up with new linens, a fire burning low in the grate to ward off the autumn chill. Lucas closed the door behind them, then turned to Eliza, his expression suddenly uncertain. "Are you all right? You're trembling." She hadn't realized it until he mentioned it, but she was indeed trembling slightly. "I'm fine," she assured him, "just overwhelmed, in a good way." He approached her slowly, giving her time to adjust to this new intimacy. "If you need time, Eliza, we can—" "No," she interrupted gently, placing a hand on his chest. "I don't need time, I need you." Relief and desire mingled in his eyes. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch reverent. "I love you, Eliza Northridge." The sound of her new name on his lips sent a thrill through her. "And I love you, Lucas Northridge, with all my heart." His kiss was tender at first, then increasingly passionate as Eliza responded with a fervor that surprised them both. Years of fear and restraint melted away under the heat of their mutual desire, replaced by a trust so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Later, as they lay entwined in the large bed, Eliza's head resting on Lucas's chest, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I'm thinking about fear," she answered honestly, "about how it can protect us but also imprison us if we let it." Lucas's arms tightened around her. "And have you let it go now? Your fear?" Eliza raised herself on one elbow to look into his face. "Not entirely," she admitted. "I don't think fear ever leaves us completely, but I've learned that love can be stronger, braver, that some people are worth the risk." "As are you," Lucas said, drawing her down for a kiss. "Worth every risk, every battle, every moment of waiting." In that moment, in the safety of her husband's arms, Eliza knew she had found not just love, but home, a place where fear could exist, but would never again rule her heart. 5 years later, Eliza stood on the porch of Northridge Ranch, watching as Lucas taught their 3-year-old son, Thomas, to ride his first pony. Emma, now 15 and growing into a beautiful young woman, stood beside her, holding baby Sarah, who had been born just 6 months earlier. "Thomas is fearless," Emma observed as the little boy squealed with delight, his father's strong hands keeping him secure in the saddle. "Like his father," Eliza agreed, her heart swelling with love for her family. The years had brought changes to Northridge Ranch, a new wing added to the house, improvements to the barns and corrals, more cattle, more hands to manage them. Lucas's business had prospered, making him one of the most successful ranchers in Wyoming territory. But the most significant changes had been within Eliza herself. The fear that had once defined her had receded, replaced by a confidence born of love and security. She had found her voice, not only as Lucas's wife and the mother of his children, but as a woman in her own right. She now helped manage the ranch's accounts, corresponded with buyers, and had even traveled to Cheyenne with Lucas for business meetings. Arthur Blackwell had made one attempt to cause trouble, sending a lawyer to claim that Eliza had stolen property when she fled his home years before. Judge Adler had swiftly dismissed the case, and a stern warning from the judge, combined with the public embarrassment, had apparently convinced Blackwell to leave the Northridges alone. "Mama, look," Thomas called, his little face alight with excitement. "I'm riding. I see you, my brave boy." Eliza called back, waving. Lucas looked up, meeting her gaze across the yard, his smile as warm and loving as it had been on their wedding day. In that smile was a promise kept, a life shared, a future secure. "Are you happy, Eliza?" Emma asked suddenly, bouncing little Sarah gently in her arms. Eliza turned to the girl who had become like a daughter to her, her heart full. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible." Emma nodded, satisfied. "I knew Uncle Lucas would be good for you, right from the beginning when you were so afraid." "Your uncle is a remarkable man," Eliza agreed. "He taught me that not all men deserve fear, that some deserve only love." As if sensing their conversation, Lucas lifted Thomas from the pony and carried him toward the house, the little boy chattering excitedly about his adventure. Watching them approach, Eliza felt a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "What is it, my love?" Lucas asked as he reached the porch, concern crossing his face at the sight of her tears. Eliza shook her head, smiling through her tears. "Just happiness. Overwhelming happiness." Lucas shifted Thomas to one arm and pulled Eliza close with the other, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Then that makes two of us." As they stood there together, a family bound by love rather than fear, Eliza reflected on the words Lucas had spoken to her that fateful day in redemption. "Then fear me last." He had kept his promise. In a world where danger still existed, where hardships would inevitably come, Lucas had become her safe harbor, her strength, her love, and she had become his.